Got a little aggressive on that one, Jean-Paul, but
I'm like, doesn't need anything. I don't know why. I lost it. That's right. And then make a hotter one. I'm like, it's too hot. Hey everyone, Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois here, and I am the host of Duck Camp Dinners. I'm also a Prairie Fresh ambassador. Today, I'm gonna be cooking a Cajun classic that you might have never heard of, but I think you're gonna love, and I'm using the Prairie Fresh USA Prime pork loin to do it. That dish is called smothered pork chops and cabbage, and I know smothered, what is that? Cabbage, are you gonna do this on a barbecue recipe? Well, I'm gonna show you how I'm gonna make this Cajun classic uniquely mine with just a little touch of fire and a little touch of smoke. Let's get into it. First thing I need to do is really determine what my loin looks like in terms of, does it need to be trimmed, what size it is, and I'm really just gonna give it a quick little inspection. Now, this Prairie Fresh loin, it really comes ready to cook, but I'm always just gonna look to make sure there's no little blemishes or no little pieces of fat hanging off to trim off, and as usual, this loin looks perfect. Now, the thing about cutting chops from this loin, the thickness of your chops are gonna really determine your cooking time once it's in the pot, because we're gonna give this a little touch of heat on the grill, a little touch of smoke, a little kiss here and there, but most of the time it's gonna be spent in the pot with the cabbage, really smothering down. This isn't a pork chop that you're gonna eat medium rare, medium. You're not looking to tempt this with a thermometer. You're looking to take a fork to it and be fork tender, which is a little bit different, but I think there's something to it when it comes to cooking these chops in the cabbage. Something about those enzymes that happen in the cabbage that really help break down this pork chop and really keep it succulent and moist throughout that cooking process, even though you're taking it past that threshold of well done. You're really cooking it till it's fork tender. Also, when you're looking at these loins, is these marbling or fat striations throughout the loin. You can see this loin right here is really covered in them, which is gonna also help in this cooking process of keeping this loin nice and moist and succulent throughout the whole time. This is a really, really simple dish. Two main ingredients. This Prairie Fresh USA Prime loin and cabbage. There's some onions, some garlic, some seasonings, and so on and so forth, a little bit of bacon, but that's the two main ingredients. You wanna make sure those ingredients are prime and primo, because when you're using like a simple recipe with minimal ingredients, those ingredients just need to pop. And so you really wanna have the right stuff to start your recipe. So what I wanna do is I wanna decide, how thick do I want these chops? Do I want them to simmer with this cabbage for hours and hours, or do I want them done in an hour? I want them done in an hour. I got 2 kids at home. Usually that's the amount of time I have to cook dinner. And so when I'm making this dish, I'm cutting them to be about a quarter, no more than a ½ inch thick. And I like to flip it over and not start with the fat cap. I like the fat cap down when I'm cooking chops. And I think that's just because now I can see just the grains of the meat better, and it's not covered up with that fat. I know that fat's there. It's gonna add a lot to this dish, so I'm gonna leave it on. Also, you don't wanna worry about, you can kind of see the silver skin underneath here. Some people might wanna take that off, especially for this dish. Don't. That breaks down and really forms just like the backbone of the broth, the juice, the braising liquid that this pork chop is cooking in. Because when this membrane breaks down, that adds collagen and really this viscosity to the juice, to the braising liquid, that if you took that off, you'd really lose that. You may have heard the word sinewy at times, whether that's beef or pork or chicken even. But when these types of cooking methods, where you have these kind of low and slow in the pot and you're cooking in a liquid, this is the magic right here. Those pork with the combination of the fat and also the meat, but even this, that kind of silver skin, that sinew right there will break down and add so much depth and foundation to that braising liquid. You want to keep it on. For this recipe, I'm going to keep them just about this thick, maybe a little thicker, but I mean, just look at that intermuscular marbling happening there. All right. So here you go. You got pretty consistent thickness here. I would say that's I don't know, ½ inch, maybe a little bit bigger. But this should be perfect amount with 1 head of green cabbage, or you got a head of green cabbage and a little plus. That cabbage is gonna wilt down a lot, so it's gonna look like a lot when you're cutting that cabbage, and we'll get into that later. And these chops are just gonna be kind of buried within those layers, kind of cooking nice and slow and low within all those vegetables.
All right, while I'm finishing up this cabbage, I just want to go over a little bit of the rest of the ingredients. Of course, you have your Prairie Fresh USA Prime pork loin. We have some Prairie Fresh bacon. We have our green cabbage. You have your yellow onion, garlic, bay leaf, some Cajun seasonings, salt and pepper to taste. If you want, I also have a little chicken stock just in case I want to add some moisture to the dish, a little added moisture, which I probably will, but it's really going to depend on kind of if you feel like the pot needs a little bit of that extra atmosphere, then you can add it then. Water works fine too, because this is going to make a pretty good, vegetable pork stock just cooking together like this. Now, I said this earlier, right? The cabbage, the sweetness of the cabbage goes great with the pork chops, but that also applies to the onion and garlic as well. These are two vegetables that you don't think about them as sweet, but they are high in sugars. And if you know how to manipulate them, you can bring those sugars out more, only adding to the total dish of how that natural sweetness of these ingredients is gonna pair perfectly with that chop. Now you can put this on a mandolin, you can do this with a sharp knife. You just want thin slices. If you want to chop it, you can. That's it. Now, cabbage is cut, onions are cut. Bacon, this is shingled Prairie Fresh bacon. It's cut in just little squares. If you have a whole slab of bacon, you go ahead and make lardons or like chunks of bacon, but most of the time you're gonna find this shingle type, and it's okay. You're gonna use this just for a little added fat, little added smokiness. And again, there's gonna be cure in this, adding to that whole undertones of sweetness that we're gonna add to this dish. Almost every ingredient brings a different element of sweetness into this dish. It's not gonna be overly sweet, it's a savory dish, but just those undertones of sweetness are gonna really help aid in the flavor of this whole dish as a whole. First things we want to do is render your bacon. Now I just have a splash of cooking oil down there just to get a little moist, a little lubrication on the bottom of that pot, and we'll add our bacon right into there. Don't want to rip it through. We want to get this, we want to extract all the bacon fat from this bacon, get it nice and crispy, and we're going to end up using that bacon later on in the recipe. But for right now, we just want to render it nice and slow on a medium flame or so and get this bacon crisp up. All right, so my bacon is looking good. It doesn't need to be completely crispy. It just wants to be rendered. With this grease, I got my fire all the way on low right now. Because if you notice, the bacon caused a little bit of stick on the bottom, and that's a good thing. This is the fond, that's the pot that bacon caused, and that's all gonna aid in the flavor of the final dish. So that's a good thing that we have this, but we wanna be careful not to burn it. And you can see right on the edges, getting a little too dark for my liking. So I have the onions ready to go. Now I'm not gonna give it any salt right now because I don't want to sweat the onions. I actually want to get some caramelization off the onions. All right, the onions look good. You can see got some nice caramelization happening off of it. I'm just gonna take all that cabbage I cut. It looks like a lot of cabbage, but this is gonna come down by half, if not more. Put my off to the side there. Add half my cabbage right now. Add a little pinch of salt. That salt's, again, gonna draw out the moisture from that cabbage. Don't sweat too much about better stir it right now. Just get that cabbage in there. Have those two different layers of salt. It's just a pinch, not a whole lot. We're not looking to season this dish quite yet. We're just looking to draw that moisture out of that cabbage. So traditionally, you would take these chops and brown them in the pot, and you certainly can do that. You would do that before you put your onions, you do that before you put your cabbage. After you render that bacon, that would go into the pot. But I like to make this dish my own, and by getting these pork chops on the grill, just adds another little element of fire into this dish. Of course, if you have a charcoal grill or a smoker, go ahead and do the same thing with your chops there. It'll even add more of a element and depth to the final dish. But very simply, I'm just gonna take my Cajun seasoning and get them on all sides. I'm gonna be pretty liberal with this seasoning. This is gonna be the main salt and pepper and seasoning in this dish. I'm just gonna adjust slightly with just plain salt and pepper later on. Wanna get both sides here. I like to always keep one hand free for flipping raw meat and then the other hand free for seasoning. Therefore, I'm not cross-contaminating. I'm also not getting my hands kind of caked up, if you will. I want to keep them dry when I'm seasoning out. Also, what I like to do is just stack them now. And then stand them up, and then season that fat cap, if you will. All sides are seasoned. When I'm done with that, I don't flip them over. I just give them a little blot on the cutting board and get all those residual seasonings from the cutting board. All right, pork chops are seasoned. Grill is hot. One thing I do like to do, if you have a little, maybe just a paper towel of vegetable oil or some duck fat like this, just give your grill a light spray just to make sure you got a nice greased grill. This one's really clean. It's greased. It's ready to go with the chops. I'm just gonna add them right onto this hot grill. You can hear it sizzling right away. And it's okay if we don't even get these perfectly cooked. We're not trying to cook them fully right now. We're just trying to get some good grill marks, get them kissed with fire before they go into that cabbage pot. And just, that's when all that magic's gonna happen. When that cabbage is starting to wilt like it is in the pot, the pork chops will now have a good grill flavor to them. They're gonna go into that pot and really just marry together to create that final dish. Now, I don't even need to get grill marks all the way through here. These pork chops are going to cook until they're fork tender in the pot. Again, just trying to get some good caramelization, good kiss of fire on there. But now we're ready to get into that cabbage pot, allow these pork chops to really sit in there nice and slow and low and get real tender. See, this cabbage looks good, and it's kind of dry on the bottom. Not too dry, it's got some nice moisture in there, but we're gonna definitely wanna add some stock to that. All right, so I'm just gonna add, I don't know, about a cup of chicken stock into that, just to add some moisture. Just have another cup of chicken stock as you go. You might wanna add some more. We're gonna see throughout the process here. I'm just gonna add these pork chops to my pot, but I'm not just gonna put them on top. I'm gonna clear little beds in there, leaving a little cabbage on the bottom and then covering it up with the rest of the cabbage. All right, last couple chops, find your bed, give them a smother with that cabbage. Just being covered in that cabbage and having that moist environment for these chops to cook in is really that slow method here of smothering. Add a little bit more stock. The whole mixture has come back up to a pretty hard simmer, so we're gonna wanna knock that fire down a little bit. Just allow those pork chops to slow cook so they're nice and tender in the pot. Now that my pork chops and cabbage have been cooking for about 30 minutes, I want to taste for seasoning. I'm just going to adjust with salt and pepper if needed here. All I need is the broth. It's looking good, smelling good, and it's perfectly seasoned. I'm not going to touch it. I'm just going to continue to allow all those ingredients to cook together. Make sure that pork chop gets nice and tender before we get to eat. All right, our smothered pork chops and cabbage are done, and I know that because I've checked them a couple of times. They're fork tender, but mostly I can smell it, and it smells delicious. All those ingredients coming together in that pot. It's really just wafting through the air right here. Let's take it out. All right. You see those chops are still buried deep underneath that cabbage. I'm just gonna grab my little wooden spatula. I'm gonna try to be very careful so I don't break the chops up. I just wanna add the cabbage right on top of the rice. If you wanna add a little bit more stock just to get a little bit more of that gravy, you can. And then from there, go ahead and throw a chop on. This is a Chef Jean-Paul portion. I'm gonna add another chop right there. Then I like to just finish it with some of this crispy bacon. Scattering around. It's just a great contrast bite from all that soft pork and soft cabbage. It adds a great bite of salt into that every little bite, and plus a nice little contrast of color with those pork chops. All right, folks, that's my smothered pork chop and cabbage made with the Prairie Fresh USA Prime pork loin. Remember, if you're at your grocery store, if you see that Prairie Fresh logo, pick it up, cook it at your home, enjoy it with your family. My name's Chef Jean-Paul Bourgeois, and I hope you enjoyed this video as much as I loved cooking it for you.